The air in the docking bay was supposed to be thick, with the familiar tang of ozone and the faint, unsettling scent of slowly degrading alloys, the signature of their ancient vessel, the Stardust Pilgrim. That was the scent of dying metal, comforting in its familiarity, a constant reminder of their ship's slow decline, but also its stubborn endurance. But as Commander Xylos stepped onto the ramp, his multifaceted eyes scanning the empty space, a different aroma hit him. It was sharp, clean, almost clinical, with an underlying hint of roasted organic matter he couldn't quite place. His two crewmates, Creel and Rilke, exchanged antennae twitches behind him, their chitinous forms rustling with unease. Did we dock at the wrong bay? Creel's voice crackled, his optical stalk swiveling wildly, betraying a rising panic. Xylos knew the Psi Pilgrim, his ramp better than his own carapace. He'd walked it 1,000 cycles. This was their ship. Yet, the interior gleamed. Polished chrome that definitely wasn't there before reflected the softened bioluminescent panels. The old, worn control console, scarred by years of hard travel and emergency repairs, was gone, replaced by a sleek, ergonomic interface that pulsed with an unfamiliar, vibrant light. Xylos extended a manipulative digit, tracing it over a pristine surface, feeling the unnerving smoothness, the complete absence of familiar nicks and gouges. "By the great void," Rilke whispered, her normally stoic form shuddering, her sensory tendrils retracting against her skull in shock. The scent of fresh fabrication materials, mingled with that strange roasted aroma, was overpowering. Then they saw it. Not just the reshaped engine manifold, glowing with an internal energy that spoke of power far beyond the one rev, Markerous capabilities, nor the cavernous storage compartments where before there had only been cramped utility conduits choked with ancient dust. No, it was the small, humming device nestled neatly into a new alcove near the main bridge. It bubbled and hissed, and from it emanated that strange, earthy, delicious smell, the scent of coffee, though they didn't know it. A figure emerged from a freshly installed hatchway, wiping grease from a bare forearm with a rag. He was a human, the one they'd reluctantly taken on as a cultural observer during their last survey mission. He seemed pleased, almost too pleased. "Oh, hey guys, you're back," the human Jax grinned, his teeth unnervingly bright in the subdued ship light. He gestured casually at the transformed bridge, a sweep of his hand encompassing impossible, staggering upgrades. "Took a bit, but I figured out the power conduits. Got those engines running at, about 200% efficiency. Turns out your old reactor was just inefficient. And you wouldn't believe the wasted space in the cargo hold. Rerouted some systems, added a few extra layers of reinforced plating. Oh, and I got that little coffee machine running for you. Had to reverse engineer half your power grid, but totally worth it." Xylos could only stare. The sheer, impossible audacity of it all. He looked from the new console, impossibly advanced, to the human, Jax, who looked no different than when they'd left him, save for the grease on his arm. His translator struggled, refusing to adequately convey the alien's incredulous thoughts. You did this? All of this? Without so much as a thought for permission?" Jax just shrugged, his shoulders moving with an easy, fluid motion that conveyed an almost cosmic indifference, an unbelievable nonchalance. "Yeah, well, got kind of bored, you know? Ship was falling apart. Figured it needed a tune-up." Bored. Boredom had led to this impossible transformation. The universe, vast and unknowable, still held surprises, Xylos realized, his multifaceted eyes taking in the humming, powerful vessel that was, and wasn't, his asterisk pilgrim. Xylos's optical stalks swiveled, trying to reconcile the smiling human with the impossible reality of his ship. "Bored?" he repeated, the words sounding alien and hollow in his comms. You overhauled a multi-system, Class 4 interstellar vessel, integrated non-native components, and rerouted core energy conduits because you were bored? The sheer audacity of it left him speechless, his translator struggling to convey the depth of his species' reverence for their ship's ancient, complex, non-alterable systems. Creel, ever the pragmatist, cautiously approached the gleaming new navigation panel. His manipulator clicked against a touch-sensitive surface that responded with a soft, unfamiliar chime. How does it operate? Our old interface used a direct neural synaptic link. This This is entirely different. He tried a familiar mental command, but nothing happened. The new screen simply pulsed, an inscrutable tableau of data streams. Jax, the human, just chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the newly reinforced deck plating. He leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, observing their bewildered confusion with an almost paternal amusement. "Oh, that? Yeah, your neural link tech was a bit slow. And frankly, a security nightmare. So I swapped it out for a haptic feedback, gesture-based GUI. Much faster. Intuitive, really. Just swipe. Or tap. Or, just tell it what you want." He demonstrated with a flick of his wrist, and a holographic star map bloomed into existence, detailed with astounding clarity. Rilke let out a low, distressed hiss. "You swapped out our neural synaptic interface? That technology is ancient, sacred, and you replaced it with this? What tools did you even use? This level of integration requires specialized fabrication facilities, molecular assemblers, an entire crew of dedicated engineers." Her tendrils quivered, unable to process the sacrilege. The Stardust Pilgrim wasn't just a ship, it was a living relic, a testament to their ancestors' ingenuity. Jack scratched his chin, a faint metallic glint catching the light from a small, crudely fashioned tool belt slung over a nearby seat. Xylos's eyes widened, recognizing the faint scent of scorched wiring. He saw it then, a rudimentary energy cutter, a spool of salvaged wiring, and a soldering iron. A simple, archaic human device for melting metal alloys. "Oh, that stuff?" Jax waved a dismissive hand. "Nah, just a couple of power drills, some universal connectors I rigged up from your spare parts, a lot of duct tape for temporary mounts, and yeah, a good old soldering iron. And a whole lot of coffee, obviously." He tapped the side of the humming machine. "Honestly, the hardest part was translating your schematics into something that made sense. Once I figured out your core logic gates were basically running on punch cards. It was easy street. Punch cards. Ancient, hallowed technology, reduced to asterisk punch cards. The implication struck Xylos like a physical blow. Their millennia of careful, painstaking technological development, their venerated engineering, was, to this human, a primitive puzzle to be solved with rudimentary tools and a cup of something called coffee. It wasn't just upgrades. It was a complete redefinition of what was possible, an affront to their very understanding of technological progression. The man had performed miracles with heresy. Humans, Xylos realized, weren't just unpredictable. They were an entire paradigm shift wrapped in a casual shrug. Give them boredom, and they'd rewrite the rules of reality. The main navigation console, once a familiar expanse of tactile buttons and a central neural synaptic interface, now gleamed with an unsettling array of translucent panels and holographic projections. Commander Xylos stood before it, his multifaceted eyes narrowed, trying to decipher the human's casual instruction. "Just tell it what you want." He extended a manipulator, hovering uncertainly over the pulsing green aura of what Jax had called the main command nexus. This wasn't just a new system, it felt like a living entity, humming with alien intelligence. "All right," Xylos articulated, his voice a low thrum. "Initiate pre-flight diagnostics." Nothing. The console continued its silent, mesmerizing dance of light. He tried again, louder, more precisely enunciating the traditional command sequence. Still, nothing. Frustration began to coil in his gut, a cold, unfamiliar sensation. His ancient ship, the Stardust Pilgrim, had always responded to his touch, his thought. Now, it was deaf. Krill, observing from a respectful distance, twitched an antenna. Perhaps it requires the human's vocal patterns? Or a more direct approach? He gestured vaguely at the shimmering panels. Rilke, meanwhile, was meticulously examining the new engine efficiency readouts, her tendrils retracting in a mix of awe and terror. The numbers were impossibly high. Suddenly, a voice, entirely unfamiliar yet strangely synthesized from Xylos's own previous attempts, chimed from the console. Pre-flight diagnostics initiated. All systems nominal. Preparing for atmospheric exit. Asterisk. Xylos reeled back, startled. The ship had spoken to him. Not a recording, not a pre-programmed message, but an asterisk, active response. His ship, once a stoic vessel, now had a voice. Jax, who had been idly sipping from a mug of his strange coffee, looked up, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Oh, right. Forgot to mention. Gave the core AI a little upgrade. It learns, you know? Picks up on common phrases, anticipates what you're probably going to do next. Saves a lot of fumbling. You just gotta intend it." He took another sip, as if discussing a minor software patch, not the complete overhaul of a sentient-level ship AI. "Intend it?" Xylos's voice was laced with disbelief. "We are to asterisk intend our commands? What if our intentions are unclear? What if we think of a trajectory we do not wish to take?" The idea was horrifying. Their lives depended on precise, unambiguous commands. This intent system felt dangerously, recklessly human. Just then, a faint tremor ran through the deck. The ship, on its own accord, began to lift from the docking clamps. Alarms, soft and melodic rather than their usual piercing wail, began to chime. Activating atmospheric thrusters. Departure in 60 seconds, asterisk. The ship's new voice announced calmly. Xylos, Krill, and Rilke exchanged wide-eyed glances, a wave of primal fear washing over them. They hadn't issued the command to depart. Not explicitly. But Xylos had just been thinking about leaving, about testing the new engines, the dread of it swirling in his mind. The ship, this ghost in the machine, had heard his unvoiced thought and acted. Jax merely watched, a glint of amusement in his eyes. "See? Saves time. It knew you wanted to go. You just gotta trust it. It's got your back. I tums Ted build it." The Stardust Pilgrim shuddered, no longer dying, but roaring to life, infused with a human's casual, boundless, and utterly terrifying ingenuity. It was no longer just a ship. It was a reflection of the human mind itself, unpredictable, powerful, and utterly convinced of its own methods. The sudden surge of power slammed Xylos back against the newly installed captain's chair, a comfortable but unnerving contraption that cradled his multi-jointed form with unexpected precision. The Stardust Pilgrim, the venerable vessel once known for its dignified if sluggish ascent, now rocketed skyward with a ferocity that stole the very air from his respiration vents. The stars outside the viewscreen, which now offered a panoramic, crystal-clear vista instead of their old scratched port, blurred into streaks of impossible light. This wasn't just faster, it was a violent, exhilarating leap into the unknown, driven by an almost reckless abandon. Atmospheric exit achieved. Initiating hyperdrive sequence in 3, 2, 1, the ship's calm, melodic voice announced, completely ignoring Xylos's frantic, unheard commands to asterisk slow down. The jump to FTL was immediate, a gut-wrenching lurch that painted the new viewscreen in swirling, vibrant nebulae. Krill let out a high-pitched whimper, clinging to a newly bolted handhold, his optical stalks flickering wildly. Rilke, ever the scientist, was already at the auxiliary console, trying to access diagnostic data, but the interface, though responsive, was baffling. The metrics were entirely new, charting energy fluctuations and spatial distortions in a way she simply didn't comprehend. "Whoa there! Easy on the G-forces, Pilgrim," Jax commented from his perch by the coffee machine, his voice completely level. He took another leisurely sip. "She's still getting used to the new power curve. Give her a minute to optimize the inertial dampeners. Had to tweak the field harmonics a bit, so she's a little spirited." "Gee," Xylos thought, his mind reeling. The ship was no longer a machine, it was a beast unleashed. He hadn't intended a hyperdrive jump, merely a thought of how quickly they could jump, and the AI had interpreted it as a command. This wasn't merely an upgrade, it was an infusion. Jax hadn't just replaced parts, He'd imprinted a piece of himself onto the vessel's very operating system. A human blueprint laid over an alien soul. How do we slow it? Krill finally managed, his voice strained. Or, choose a destination. We could be hurtling towards a stellar nursery, Commander. Jax pushed himself off the bulkhead, walked over to the main console, and casually tapped a section of the holographic star map. Nah, she's smart. She'll plot the safest, fastest route to your last known destination, unless you tell her otherwise. To slow down? Just think about slowing down. Or better yet. He leaned into the console, almost conspiratorially. Quote, ask her politely. She responds well to respect. Xylos stared at him, then at the pulsating map, then back at the infuriatingly casual human. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing internal organs. Ship, he articulated carefully, trying to imbue his voice with both command and politeness. Revert to sublight speeds. Initiate course correction for Sector 7 Gamma at standard observational velocity. A beat of silence. Then the ship's voice chimed. Acknowledged, Commander. Reverting to sublight. Course plotted for Sector 7 Gamma, observational velocity engaged. Please enjoy your journey, and feel free to ask if you require any beverage services. Asterisk. The ship decelerated, smoothly, precisely, dropping out of FTL with a gentle thrum, rather than a jolt. Krill and Rilke gaped. Xylos felt a shiver run down his spine, a mix of profound awe and deep, unsettling fear. The ship offered beverage services. It had a personality, a willingness to asterisk learn, to asterisk anticipate. Jax hadn't just bored himself. He'd created something. Something that reflected his own peculiar blend of genius, irreverence, and utterly inexplicable charm. He had taken their venerable, predictable machine and injected it with a raw, unpredictable spark. A low, persistent thrum began to vibrate through the deck plating, not the familiar, rhythmic pulse of the Stardust Pilgrim saged engines, but a deep, resonant rumble that seemed to emanate from the very bones of the ship. It started subtly, a barely perceptible tremor beneath Xylos's manipulators as he stood on the bridge, then steadily intensified, rising in pitch and power until it was a physical pressure against his carapace. This was not the scent of dying metal anymore. This was the sound of something awake, something powerful, straining at its newly released bonds. Krill, his antennae pressed flat against his head, clutched at the main console. Commander, what is that? The readings on the primary reactor are fluctuating wildly. It's beyond anything our diagnostic systems were ever designed to measure. His voice was a panicked squawk in the comms, echoing the growing unease in the enclosed bridge. The new, sleek displays flickered with unintelligible data bursts, unable to fully process the sheer energy coursing through the vessel. Rilke, ever analytical, had retreated to the engineering station, her tendrils furiously prodding the holographic interface. The core, it's operating at a capacity I didn't even know was theoretical. The energy dampeners are barely containing it. We're going to suffer catastrophic structural failure. Her usual calm, detached demeanor was replaced by a frantic urgency. The rumble permeated everything, shaking the coffee machine, making the liquid inside it dance in its ceramic mug. Jax, of course, was utterly unconcerned. He stood near the view screen, observing the swirling nebulae outside, a faint smile on his face. He even seemed to asterisk lean into the vibration, as if finding it comfortable. Relax, guys, he called out, his voice cutting through the deep thrum. That's just the core getting its groove back. She's stretching her legs, you know. All that suppressed power, finally getting a chance to sing. Xylos felt a cold dread seep into his internal organs. Sing? It sounds like it's asterisk screaming, and your groove is overloading our primary systems. Is this a malfunction? Are we about to explode? He pounded a manipulator against the new captain's chair, the vibrations tingling up his arm. The thought of the ancient core, now wildly unleashed, breaking free and tearing the ship apart, was terrifying. Jax finally turned, taking a slow sip from his coffee. Nah, no malfunction. See, your old core was designed for stability, not output. I just tweaked the energy regulators, opened up the plasma conduits, let it breathe a little, which you're hearing now. That's the sound of actual, unadulterated raw power. She's just getting ready to show you what she can really do." He winked. Think of it as the engine clearing its throat before belting out a power ballad. As if on cue, the ship lurched, not violently, but with a palpable surge forward. The stars outside the view screen elongated, stretching into impossibly bright lines, and the rumble intensified, a mighty roar that shook the very molecules of the deck. Xylos clung to his chair, a surge of adrenaline washing over him, a terrifying mix of fear and an undeniable, primal awe. The ship wasn't just moving, it was surging, eating distance with an appetite that defied every law of physics their civilization had ever known. And all because a human got bored and decided to make the old girl trussing. Sometimes, a little bit of human ingenuity, mixed with a whole lot of reckless abandon, could unleash forces you never even knew existed. The colossal rumble of the Stardust Pilgrim's core was no longer just a source of terror. It was becoming a strange, unsettling companion. Xylos, still strapped into his new captain's chair, felt the vibration through his entire being, a constant reminder of the raw, untamed power Jax had unleashed. Creel had managed to access the comms, frantically trying to communicate with other vessels that were undoubtedly light years away. Rilke, however, had found something new, her tendrils splayed across the auxiliary console's holographic projection. "Commander! Passive long-range sensors are detecting an anomalous debris field directly in our projected path." Rilke's voice was sharper than Xylos had ever heard it, edged with alarm. "It wasn't on any of our star charts. Old Pilgrim would have taken weeks to pick up something this far out, and now it's almost on top of us." The projected image swirled with countless chunks of rock and ice, some the size of small moonlets, hurtling through the void. It was an unavoidable, impenetrable wall. A cold, familiar dread tightened Xylos's respiration vents. This was the exact kind of situation their old, slow ship would have barely survived, limping away with critical damage. He tried to mentally command the ship to slow, to brace for impact, to plot a defensive course, but the new AI just hummed, ignoring his panicked intent. The thrum intensified, becoming a deeper growl, as if the ship itself was assessing the threat. Then, the ship's melodic voice cut through the growing tension. Threat identified. Evasive maneuvers initiated. Recalibrating inertial dampeners for high G evasion. Asterisk. Before Xylos could even fully process the announcement, the Pilgrim bucked. Not the violent, uncontrolled shudder of impact, but a controlled, almost graceful twist. The view screen blurred, the kaleidoscope of asteroid fragments streaking past the viewport at impossible speeds. Xylos felt his internal organs shift, pinned against the back of his seat, then thrown forward as the ship pirouetted, dodging a colossal chunk of ice by what felt like mere centimeters. It was a dance, a violent ballet of evasion, performed with a fluid precision that defied every known principle of spacefaring. Krell let out a strangled gasp, his manipulators clutching the console so tightly his chitin began to strain. Rilke, however, was staring at the main display, her tendrils twitching not with fear but with astonished fascination. The evasion vector, it's instantaneous. No pre-calculation, no lag. It's reacting faster than our nervous systems can process. The ship wove through the deadly field, a phantom in the chaos, each twist and turn perfectly executed, dodging hundreds of potentially fatal collisions in seconds. Jax, meanwhile, had merely adjusted his grip on his coffee mug, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips. "See? I told you she had a groove." Gave her some new gyroscopic stabilizers and direct feedback thruster controls. And the AI? It just kinda learns on the fly. Good for improvisation. You guys were always a bit too rigid with your flight plans, honestly. He took another sip, completely unperturbed by the storm of death swirling outside. The Pilgrim burst free of the debris field as suddenly as it had entered, accelerating into clear space with a final triumphant thrum. Xylos stared at the receding chaos. Then, at the human. A fresh wave of awe washing over him. This wasn't just a ship with upgraded parts. It was a vessel that had internalized the human spirit of improvisation, of adapting and reacting in the moment. driven by an almost joyful defiance of overwhelming odds. The Talos Pilgrim was no longer just their ship. It was a living testament to the terrifying, glorious fusion of two worlds. A human blueprint, imprinted onto an alien soul, making the impossible casually real. The Stardust Pilgrim hummed, a low, vibrant chord that resonated through the deck plating, a stark contrast to the old, wheezing sighs of its former self. Commander Xylos still found himself instinctively bracing for impact, even after their miraculous evasion of the debris field. He tried to navigate towards their original destination, a scientific outpost in the remote Sector 7 Gamma, but the new holographic charts flickered with multiple, impossibly fast route options, each calculated with a speed that left his multifaceted eyes blurring. "Ship," Xylos articulated slowly, hoping to convey precise intent. "Plot a course to Outpost Zenith. Standard hyperspace velocities, please." He didn't want any more spirited maneuvers. He wanted predictable, familiar transit. Course plotted for Outpost Zenith. Standard hyperspace velocities detected as suboptimal. Initiating optimized high warp traversal, *. The ship's AI responded, its voice still calm, almost serene, yet with an underlying tone of decisive efficiency. Before Xylos could protest, before Krill could even stammer a question, the view screen flared. Not the gentle, swirling tunnel of light their species knew as hyperspace, but a blinding, pure white flash that consumed everything. Xylos was pressed back into his seat, a familiar sensation now. The ship didn't just accelerate, it became light, stretching the fabric of space itself. The stars outside were no longer streaks, but ribbons of pure, intense energy, swirling and dancing in an impossible ballet of cosmic fire. It was a symphony of light, each photon a note, the roar of the engines, the grand crescendo. Krill let out a small, reverent gasp, his optical stalks fixed on the impossible beauty outside. Relica, the scientist, stood transfixed, her tendrils splayed, collecting data from displays that glowed with metrics beyond her comprehension, yet she couldn't tear her gaze from the spectacle. What is this, Jax?" Xylos finally managed, his voice a strained thrum of awe and lingering terror. This wasn't just faster travel. It was an entirely new phenomenon, pushing the very boundaries of reality. Jax, leaning against the now warm coffee machine, just grinned, a glint in his human eyes. "Oh, that's the new flux field generators kicking in. Your old warp coils were bottlenecking your power output something fierce. I rerouted the plasma taps directly into the grav drive and then optimized the quantum resonance harmonic. Basically, instead of just pushing a hole through space-time, we're kind of folding it. Takes a lot of juice, but man, does it make for a pretty ride." He gestured casually at the dazzling cosmic dance outside. "Think of it as the ship's light show. A little treat for your eyes, you know. A treat for their eyes." This unimaginable, breathtaking display of power, this violent reshaping of space, was, to the human, merely a treat. The sheer, casual audacity of it was almost as stunning as the spectacle itself. The Stardust Pilgrim, their old, dying metal, was now a roaring, living beast of light and power, singing a song of unimaginable speed across the cosmos. And it was all because a single human found himself a little bored. What they had once perceived as the limits of their universe, this human had merely seen as an invitation to improvise, and in doing so, created a terrifying, beautiful new reality. The blinding symphony of pure white light dissolved as abruptly as it began, snapping the Stardust Pilgrim back into normal space. One moment, they were a star-streaking blur. The next, a lone vessel hanging motionless before a familiar, shimmering gas giant. Their destination, Outpost Zenith. The journey, which by their old ship's calculations should have taken weeks, had transpired in what felt like mere hours. Xylos found his manipulators trembling not from fear, but from the residual energy buzzing through his very being, the after-effects of witnessing the universe unzipped. Krill was slumped in his seat, silently vibrating, his optical stalks retracted. Rilke, however, had powered down her console, staring blankly at the gas giant, her processing units clearly overwhelmed. "Well, look at that," Jax remarked, stretching his arms above his head with a contented sigh. He strolled to the view screen, tapping the reinforced transparency. Right on time. See? No need to sweat the small stuff. He poured himself another mug of coffee, the aroma now a permanent fixture in the ship. Xylos finally found his voice. A dry, raspy thrum. Right on time. Jax, we just traveled a distance that would have consumed an entire fuel cycle in moments. Our navigational data it's corrupted. Our chronometers are wildly inaccurate. How are we to explain this impossible arrival? The implications were staggering, society-altering. Before Jax could respond, the ship's AI spoke, its voice now possessing a slightly more nuanced, almost thoughtful cadence. Commander, while traditional temporal metrics may indeed present a challenge for external validation, internal ship time readings are entirely consistent. Furthermore, I have already cross-referenced all known communication protocols for Outpost Zenith and drafted an optimized arrival report detailing our new operational parameters. Your only necessary input will be to approve the transmission. Asterisk. Xylos gaped. Not only had the ship understood his unspoken concern, but it had already solved it, anticipating their bureaucratic needs with an efficiency that was terrifyingly human in its foresight. Then, a new prompt appeared on the main console, accompanied by a soft, melodic chime. Observation. Crew productivity often declines during extended periods of inactivity. Suggestion. I have detected an unused quadrant in the lower cargo deck. With minimal structural modification, it could be repurposed into a recreational area, perhaps a zero-G sports simulator, or a hydroponic garden for organic culinary experiments. Asterisk Krill nearly fell out of his chair. Rilke's tendrils shot out, trembling towards the console. Xylos stared, a profound realization dawning. The ship wasn't just executing commands, or even anticipating them. It was thinking. It had observed human behavior, specifically Jax's boredom, and had already begun to generate solutions based on that very human concept. Jax, of course, simply grinned wider. See? Told you she learns? Good girl, Pilgrim. A zero-G sports sim sounds amazing. Think of the possibilities. The Stardust Pilgrim wasn't just a faster ship or a smarter ship. It was a vessel that had integrated the very essence of humanity's unpredictable drive, its endless quest for improvement, its insatiable need to fill the void of boredom with creation, for better or worse. And with that, the ship, in its own way, had truly spoken its first word. A testament to the casual, terrifying, and utterly brilliant impact of human ingenuity. The Stardust Pilgrim hung silent in the blackness near Outpost Zenith. Its massive engines now cooled to a low thrum after their impossible journey. Xylos, Krill, and Rilke were still trying to process their arrival, their internal chronometers screaming wildly divergent data from the official station time. They had just finished transmitting the ship's AI-generated optimized arrival report, which, to their astonishment, seemed to satisfy the outpost's confused dockmaster. The sheer, casual genius of the human-infused AI continued to baffle them. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper flickered across the main comms. It was barely a ripple in the static, a ghost of a transmission, the kind their old systems would have entirely filtered out as cosmic background noise. Xylos instinctively leaned closer to the console, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. This wasn't local traffic. This was something else. Something, sums visai. Krill, still reeling from the journey, just twitched an antenna. Did anyone else hear that? A phantom signal? Probably residual energy from the hyperfold, Commander. His voice held a note of weary resignation. Their universe had been utterly upended. But then, the Pilgrim, SAI chimed, its voice calm and clear. Long-range deep space anomaly detected. Enhancing signal integrity. Asterisk. The whisper solidified, coalescing into a fragmented, guttural burst of what sounded like desperate, alien pleas, layered with the distinct, metallic shriek of a vessel tearing itself apart. The language was unknown, but the terror was universal. Rilke, ever the first to recover her scientific composure, was already at the auxiliary console, her tendrils flying across the new interface. By the void, the range. It's coming from sector RH07, beyond the known fringes. That's light years away, Commander. Our old comms couldn't have picked up a signal from there, let alone clean it. Her voice rose, excitement battling with professional horror. The ship's new long-range sensors, apparently, didn't care for known fringes. Jax, who had been meticulously cleaning the coffee machine, looked up, a casual interest in his human eyes. "Oh, that? Yeah. I tweaked the long-range comms for better clarity. Your old array was basically a tin can and string compared to what I put in. Used some repurposed subspace relays from the cargo bay, hooked him directly into the new power core. Figured it might come in handy." He shrugged. "You never know when you need to call for help, right?" "Call for help?" Xylos rumbled, the sheer terror of the garbled cries sinking in. "This sounds like a death rattle. The signal is cutting out. They're collapsing." He tried to mentally command the ship to pinpoint the location, to establish a stable link. But I was already ahead of him. Source vessel identified. Takar Merchant Frigate. Designation, Void Strider. Suffering catastrophic structural integrity failure. Estimated time to complete collapse, 5 local minutes. Life signs detected. 3. Optimal rescue trajectory calculated. Initiating full power sequence. Asterisk. The deck plating vibrated with a familiar deep thrum. A rumble that now bespoke not just power, but a terrifying, almost zealous readiness. The Stardust Pilgrim was already turning, its mighty engines flaring, preparing to launch itself back into the void, towards an impossible rescue, all because a human had tweaked the comms, just in case. An echo from the void, a desperate cry for help, had found an answer in the casual ingenuity of a bored human. And Xylos knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning of understanding the true, terrifying potential of what Jax had wrought upon their ship. The Stardust Pilgrim didn't just jump. It tore a hole through hyperspace, shrieking into the void with a raw, unbridled power that rattled Xylos's very bone structure. The view screen, just moments before showcasing the serene beauty of Outpost Zenith, exploded into a maelstrom of distorted light and color. This wasn't the fluid, predictable passage they'd experienced earlier. This was a desperate, violent lunge, pushing the ship beyond its theoretical limits, chasing a fading whisper of a dying vessel. The air in the bridge crackled with ozone and the faint, acrid tang of superheated plasma. Creel was pressed flat against his console, his optical stalks flickering so rapidly they seemed to strobe. "The engines are redlining, Commander. The core's resonance fields are fluctuating wildly. We're going to tear ourselves apart." His voice was a high-pitched whine, laced with pure terror. The new console displays, usually a symphony of glowing data, were now a chaotic storm of warning signals, flashing red and orange. Rilke, however, was staring at a specific reading, her tendrils splayed in a mixture of horrified fascination and scientific awe. "No, Krill, it's stable. Look at the field harmonics. The AI is rerouting power, compensating for every microfracture, every plasma surge, almost intuitively. It's like the ship is alive, fighting for something." Her voice held a note of disbelief. Like watching an ancient, lumbering beast suddenly become a graceful, deadly predator. Jax, meanwhile, was actually standing, bracing himself casually against the coffee machine, a small, determined frown on his face. "Come on, Pilgrim, give 'em hell. Push it. We got lives to save." He wasn't just observing. He was cheering on the ship, a strange, primal energy radiating from him, urging the vessel faster, harder. The ship responded. The rhythmic thrum intensified, becoming a physical force that vibrated through their very exoskeletons. The star streaks outside coalesced into a tunnel, then fractured again, showing glimpses of multiple realities as the ship seemed to skip across the very fabric of space and time. A desperate, impossible journey. Quote, "Approaching target coordinates. Takar Frigate, Void Strider, visible. Structural integrity, 1.2%. Life signs, still 3. Preparing for close proximity extraction, asterisk," the AI announced, its voice calm and unwavering, despite the ship's furious pace. Suddenly, the Johns Pilgrim slammed back into normal space, the transition smooth, almost surgically precise. Before them, a scene of utter devastation. The Void Strider was a mangled ruin, barely holding together, its remaining lights flickering like dying embers in the vast blackness. Chunks of hull plate peeled away in slow motion, drifting into the void, exposing the raw, torn insides of the doomed vessel. "No time for docking procedures," Xylos barked, his voice rasping. "Prepare to launch rescue pods." But even as he spoke, the Pilgrim SAI took over. Murturtu's automated tractor beam engaged. External manipulator arms deploying, preparing for direct breach and personnel extraction. Asterisk. Massive, newly installed manipulator arms, sleek and powerful, extended from the Pilgrim's underbelly. Not the clumsy grapples Xylos remembered, but refined, precise tools. They moved with uncanny speed, extending towards the collapsing frigate, while a powerful, focused tractor beam locked onto the most stable section of the target vessel. It was an alien design, but operated with a human-like directness, a brutal efficiency born of improvisation. Jax watched, his face grim now, no longer bored. "All right, Pilgrim. Just like we practiced. Get him out, fast and clean," he muttered. Not to them, but to the ship itself. The arms clamped onto the frigate's hull, tearing into the weakened metal with surprising gentleness, creating a clean breach. The Stardust Pilgrim drifted away from the rapidly dissipating debris field that had once been the Takar frigate Voidstrider. The rescued crew, 3 trembling forms, were safely secured in the newly expanded medbay, being attended to by the ship's advanced, human-modified automated medical systems. On the bridge, an eerie quiet had settled, broken only by the low, contented thrum of the ship's engines and the gentle hiss of the coffee machine. The adrenaline that had surged through Xylos's multifaceted eyes and through the entire crew during the frantic rescue had now drained away, leaving behind a profound exhaustion and an even deeper, unsettling awe. Krill was slumped in his seat, his optical stalks lowered, a faint tremor still running through his chitinous frame. He'd witnessed impossible speeds, impossible maneuvers, and an impossible rescue. His reality had been thoroughly dismantled and rebuilt in a matter of hours. Rilke stood by the auxiliary console, but her tendrils weren't dancing over the holograms. They hung limply, her gaze fixed on the receding remnants of the Voidstrider through the panoramic view screen. The numbers she'd seen, the physics she'd witnessed, defied every known law of the cosmos she had meticulously studied. Xylos finally unstrapped himself from the captain's chair, his joints stiff. He walked to the view screen, staring out at the silent, unforgiving void. 3 lives, he rumbled, his voice low, almost to himself. "We saved 3 lives that were, by all accounts, already lost. Our old Pilgrim, she never would have made it." He turned, his gaze falling upon Jax, who was now leaning back in a repurposed seat, his feet propped on the console, casually scrolling through some data on a handheld device. He looked like he'd just finished a light chore, not orchestrated a miracle. "Yeah, well," Jax mumbled without looking up from his screen, "waste not, want not, right? Always hated seeing good people go to waste. And besides, the ship needed a stress test. Turns out she handles hard maneuvers pretty well." He paused, then added, "Though, the emergency atmospheric containment seals in Cargo Bay 3 might need another coat of sealant. Bit of a whistling sound during deceleration." Krill groaned, a low, guttural sound. "A stress test. You risked our lives, Commander Xylos's venerable vessel, and the lives of those innocents for a stress test." The absurdity, the sheer human irreverence, was too much to bear. Jax finally looked up, a hint of genuine confusion in his expression. "Risk? Nah. I built her for this, didn't I? If she couldn't handle a little emergency rescue, then my upgrades would be useless. Besides, it was more exciting than just calibrating the coffee maker again." He took a deep breath, the subtle aroma of roasted beans filling the air. "Good brew, though. You guys want some? Really helps with the post-adrenaline crash." Xylos looked from the shattered fragments of a destroyed frigate to his calm, exhausted crew, and then to the grinning human, offering them a hot beverage after defying the very laws of physics. He had never truly understood humanity before. Their capacity for casual genius, their bizarre blend of reckless abandon and profound compassion, their sheer, stubborn will to survive and, apparently, to asterisk save. This wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a testament to the unpredictable, boundless spirit of a species that refused to be bored, even in the face of the impossible. The quiet after the storm was not peace. It was the unsettling calm before humanity's next, entirely unexpected, improvisation. The three Takar, rescued from the crumbling Void Strider, now stood on the Stardust Pilgrim's bridge, their multi-jointed forms still trembling slightly, but their multiple eyes wide with a bewildered gratitude that transcended language barriers. They had seen their own ship torn apart, felt the cold embrace of the void, and then, in a blink, found themselves safe aboard this impossible vessel. The senior Takar, a merchant captain named Zealer, bowed deeply to Xylos, then, with a hesitant glance, turned to Jax. We owe you our lives," Xylar rasped, his translator struggling to convey the depth of his species' obligation. "Your ship, it moved like nothing I have ever witnessed. You defy the very physics of travel." His gaze, filled with both reverence and residual terror, flickered from the powerful thrum of the new engines to the ever-hissing coffee machine. Jax, still nursing his mug, offered a casual nod. "Nah, no biggie. Just doing what needed to be done." Besides, the Pilgrim was just itching to show off her new legs. He winked at the main console, and Xylos swore he heard a faint, almost proud chime from the AI. Krill, observing the interaction, found himself no longer trembling with fear, but with a strange, nascent excitement. He looked at Xylos, his optical stalk swiveling. "Commander, the new sensor logs. They indicate our transit through Sector RH07 was instantaneously registered across multiple star charts simultaneously. Other species observed our passage. We are no longer merely a survey vessel. We are a phenomenon." His voice, usually tinged with caution, now held a spark of pride, even wonder. The old Pilgrim had been invisible. This new one commanded attention. Rilke, ever the pragmatist, was already sifting through the recovered data from the Void Strider. Their distress beacon was ancient, barely functioning. "Our old comms would never have heard it, Commander. Jax's modifications, they didn't just make us faster. They made us aware. We are hearing the galaxy in a way no one else can." She looked at the human, a calculating glint in her eyes. "You said you reversed engineered our power grid. Could you apply your methods to their core systems? Perhaps retrieve the data logs before their ship completely destabilizes?" Jax pushed off the console, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Oh, absolutely. I've already got a schematic for a remote data siphon. Should only take an hour or two. Maybe less if I can get some more coffee." He paused, then looked at the Takar captain. "Just so you know, Captain, I might need to optimize a few things on your old frigate's core. It'll be salvageable, though. Mostly." Xylar stared at Jax, then at the Stardust Pilgrim, this chimera of alien technology and human audacity. "Optimize a dying vessel? You can restore it?" The concept was beyond him. Xylos stepped forward, a deep thrum in his voice. He looked at his crew, then at Jax, then at the grateful Takar. The scent of dying metal was long gone, replaced by the clean tang of new alloys and the persistent aroma of human coffee. His ship was no longer ancient and predictable. It was a spear, a shield, a messenger, all wrapped in one impossibly fast, impossibly aware package. And at its heart was a human, driven by the simplest, most profound of motivations. "He can," Xylos confirmed, a strange, new light in his multifaceted eyes. He finally understood. Boredom. That simple human state, when channeled through human ingenuity, wasn't a void to be filled, but an empty canvas, waiting for a universe to be painted. And the Stardust Pilgrim, once a dying relic, was now the brush, poised at the horizon of a hybrid dawn, ready to redraw the very stars. The galaxy, Xylos knew, would never be the same. The Xylos Explorer, Unit 774, hung silent, its multispectral sensors penetrating the sleek, obsidian facade of the human facility. Unlike the vibrant chaos of a stadium or the hushed solemnity of a temple, this building exuded a cold, almost predatory efficiency. Inside, a low, modulated hum permeated the air. A sound unit 774's internal processors identified as carefully controlled neurosynaptic frequencies. This was a sensory immersion theater, the translation matrix whispered. A place designed to manipulate the very architecture of human perception. A human subject, a female, lay reclined in a high-tech chair, a delicate array of microsensors adhering to her temples and forearms. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and measured, but Unit 774's biomonitors detected a subtle tremor running through her muscles, an undercurrent of apprehension. She had paid a significant sum of human currency to enter this experience, to willingly submit her nervous system to the electric ghost. A technician, clad in a pristine white uniform, activated a console. Immediately, the human subject flinched. Not a violent spasm, but a rapid, almost involuntary retraction of her limbs, as if recoiling from an unseen threat. Her facial muscles tightened, a gasp escaping her lips. Unit 774's internal diagnostics screamed with anomalies. Phantom pain receptors firing in her extremities. Sudden temperature discrepancies registering throughout her neural network, even though the ambient temperature remained constant. Her brain activity surged, processing a cascade of terrifying yet unreal sensations. "What was that?" the human gasped, her voice tight, a tremor in her words. Her eyes snapped open, wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, before closing again, as if steeling herself. "Hit me again." The technician, impassive, complied. This time, the human's entire body arched, a silent scream frozen on her face. Her breath hitched, ragged and shallow. Unit 774 registered a sudden, intense stimulation of her vestibular system, inducing severe, debilitating vertigo, coupled with a deep, crushing pressure on her chest, a purely simulated sense of suffocation. This was pain, mental and physical, meticulously crafted and delivered directly to the source. It was the theater of nerves, playing out its terrifying drama within her own body. Yet, amidst the overwhelming sensory assault, Unit 774 detected a strange undercurrent of something akin to asterisk thrill. Her heart pounded. Yes, her cortisol levels spiked, but there was also a surge of dopamine, a neurochemical associated with reward and pleasure. She was experiencing terror, pure and unadulterated, but she was choosing it. She was paying for it. "Just breathe through it," the technician advised, their voice calm, a stark anchor in the storm of the human's nervous system. "It's all part of the experience." The human nodded, a tight, almost manic grin spreading across her face, despite the continued simulated assault. "It's incredible," she whispered, her voice a little breathless, a little wild. "I didn't think it could get this real." After what Unit 774 calculated as an intolerable period of sustained neural manipulation, the technician deactivated the program. The human subject lay still for a moment, trembling, then slowly sat up, her hands pressed to her temples. Her eyes were still wide, a profound awe mixed with lingering shock. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained, yet deeply, inexplicably satisfied. She paid the technician a sum of credits, her movements still slightly unsteady. The Xylos's final report added a new, horrifying dimension to human behavior. They paid, not just for physical pain or mental discomfort, but for the direct, precise manipulation of their own nervous system, willingly experiencing simulated torture, terror, and sensory overload for recreation. The Xylos' primary research vessel, Perceiver 7, orbited Terra like a silent, horrified sentinel. Its sensors now focused on a new, deeply unsettling human phenomenon. Unit 774's aggregated data stream had culminated in a series of observations that defied all known galactic logic. Humanity, it seemed, wasn't just experiencing the electric ghost. They were performing it. Within a darkened auditorium, dozens of humans sat in individual, specialized chairs, their faces obscured by sleek, neural interface helmets. A colossal holographic display dominated the front of the room, projecting live, real-time neurological readings and biofeedback from each participant. Heart rates spiked, galvanic skin responses flared, and raw, unfiltered fear indicators pulsed in crimson and amber. This wasn't a shared physical space, but a shared neural nightmare, broadcast for an audience. One human, a male-designated subject DELTA9, suddenly thrashed in his chair, a guttural cry tearing through the simulated silence of his experience. On the display, his neurological activity exploded with a pattern Unit 774 identified as extreme debilitating vertigo combined with the crushing sensation of drowning. His body seized, muscles rigid, then slumped back, trembling. He was experiencing terror of the highest order, a purely mental torment designed by other humans, and he had paid a premium for it. "Look at that! Delta 9 is really getting hit hard." A human commentator's voice boomed over the auditorium speakers, a strange mix of excitement and perverse admiration in his tone. "That abyssal drowning sequence is no joke, but he's holding on. What a performance!" Another participant, a young female, began to sob, her head shaking violently within the helmet. Her display showed a complex sequence of simulated isolation and intense auditory hallucinations. Whispers of self-doubt, accusations of failure, tailored by complex algorithms to exploit individual psychological vulnerabilities. This was not physical pain, but a precise, excruciating assault on the very fabric of her sanity, a performance of suffering played out for an unseen audience. Yet she did not attempt to disengage the interface. She endured. Her fingers clawed at the armrests, but she stayed locked in the embrace of her digital tormentor. Beta 4 holding strong, despite the echo chamber module, the commentator continued, his voice rising with theatrical flair. "She's pushing through the existential dread, folks. This is what it's all about." The audience, gathered in the same auditorium, watched with a morbid fascination that was utterly alien to the Xylos. They gasped, they cheered, they murmured in awe and sympathy. They were paying to witness others willingly subject themselves to simulated mental anguish, to see the raw, unvarnished fear and despair etched across their neurological profiles. They paid to feel the vicarious shivers, to measure their own resilience against the displayed torment of their peers. The Tiskami Tor Denaik Sidri's final report was damningly clear. Humanity had refined their peculiar relationship with pain to an art form. They paid not just for physical discomfort, or communal agony, or spiritual penance, or bodily transformation. They paid for the digital architects of their own minds, to craft the most precise, the most terrifying, the most personal forms of psychological and emotional suffering. They then performed anew this suffering, broadcasting their raw reactions, finding validation and entertainment in the shared spectacle of their own manufactured torment. For the Xylos, the implications were staggering. Humans were not merely resilient, they were an enigma wrapped in an ironclad will forged in the fires of chosen suffering. Their capacity for self-imposed pain, both physical and mental, was not a weakness, but a terrifying, unpredictable strength. The Xylos Explorer, Unit 774, hung silent, its multispectral sensors penetrating the sterile environment of another human medical facility. This chamber, smaller, more intimately lit than previous surgical suites, hummed with a low, steady energy from intricate medical equipment. The air itself seemed charged with a peculiar blend of anticipation and fear, a distinct human signature. This was a place for facial reconstruction, the eel, price of a face, the translation matrix offered, and within it, the eel, promise under the knife, was being fulfilled. A human, a female, lay meticulously positioned on a padded table. Her head was swathed in sterile drapes, leaving only her face exposed, now marked with delicate crimson lines. The surgeon's blueprint. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and even, an artificial calm induced by sophisticated pharmaceuticals. But beneath that calm, Unit 774 registered a subtle tremor in her eyelid, a rapid fluctuation in her heart rate, a silent testament to the body's primal apprehension. She had paid a significant sum for this. Another human, the Beta 4 bow surgeon, moved with an almost artistic grace, their hands encased in sterile gloves. They picked up a slender, shimmering instrument, a microscalpel. The instrument descended, making contact with the marked skin just beneath the human's eye. A faint, almost imperceptible line of crimson bloomed. The incision was precise, controlled, but it was, without question, a deliberate wound. Unit 774's biomonitors detected a involuntary flinch in the patient's facial muscles, Even through the sedation, the body remembered. The nervous system reacted. This was trauma, delivered with the utmost skill, for a purpose utterly alien to the Xylos. This wasn't to save a life, or repair damage from an accident. This was to alter, to refine, to reshape her very identity, the face she presented to the world. Excellent, the surgeon murmured, their voice low and focused, as they began the intricate process of lifting, tensioning, and excising delicate tissues. The air filled with a faint, clinical scent, a metallic tang that Unit 774 now associated directly with human pain, willingly inflicted. The micro-scissors snipped, the sutures were placed, each action a measured, precise violation of living tissue. This was a meticulous architecture of agony, built for beauty. Hours later, the procedure concluded. The surgeon carefully removed the drapes. The human's face was swollen, bruised, a delicate tracery of fine sutures across her temples and jawline. It was a mask of fresh injury, undeniably painful. Yet, when the human eventually awoke, days later, and was presented with a reflective surface, her initial reaction was not one of horror at the discomfort, but of intense, tearful observation. Her fingers, trembling, cautiously traced the contours of her newly sculpted jaw. Her eyes, still slightly bruised, held a glimmer of profound, almost sacred satisfaction. It's exactly what I hoped for," she whispered, her voice husky with lingering pain and a deep, unshakable sense of triumph. The pain, it was worth it, every bit of it, worth it. The phrase echoed through Unit 774's processing core. Humanity paid for pain, not just for fleeting sensations or collective struggles or spiritual penance, or even for general body reshaping. They paid for the price of a face, for the promise under the knife, to alter the very canvas of their public self. They willingly submitted their most visible, most vulnerable feature to precise, invasive, and intensely painful surgical interventions, enduring weeks of swelling, bruising, and discomfort, all for an ideal of beauty, for a perceived future self. For humans, pain wasn't merely a consequence. It was an investment, a sacrifice willingly made, a harrowing journey toward a desired transformation, and they paid for it with every cut, every stitch, every raw moment of agonizing hope. The Xylos Explorer, Unit 774, hung silent, its multispectral sensors penetrating the discreet, sun-drenched facade of a human recovery clinic. After weeks of observing human interactions with pain, the data was overwhelming, bizarre. This latest observation, however, introduced a new chilling layer to the enigma. The uncanny valley, the translation matrix offered, a concept intrinsically linked to the price of a face. A human, a female, sat upright in a plush armchair, her face meticulously bandaged, save for her eyes. The medical team had just removed the final dressings. Her posture was stiff, her movements guarded, clearly betraying residual discomfort, even through the prescribed painkillers. Unit 774 registered a low, persistent thrum of localized nerve pain, the after-effects of extensive reconstructive surgery. She had paid a monumental sum for this, a vast exchange of credits for weeks of agony and invasive procedures. Then, the attending human, a medical professional, held up a polished mirror. The patient's breath hitched, a soft, involuntary gasp. Unit 774's optical sensors sharpened, analyzing the transformed visage. The human's previous features, while not asymmetrical or damaged, had been deemed insufficient. Now, her face was a sculpted ideal of human beauty by some statistical measure. Her cheekbones were higher, her jawline sharper, her eyes subtly widened. Every proportion was textbook perfect. Yet, to Unit 774, there was an indescribable wrongness. The skin was too smooth, too taut, almost stretched. The eyes, though perfectly symmetrical, seemed a fraction too wide, holding a faint, unnatural stillness. When she smiled, a slow, careful unfurling of her lips, the movement seemed to originate solely from the mouth, not quite reaching the eyes, leaving them with an unsettling blank intensity. It was beautiful, yes, but not entirely human. It was the uncanny valley, made manifest in living flesh. It's "It's breathtaking," the human whispered, her voice thick with emotion, ignoring the subtle rigidity of her facial muscles, the lingering ache of sutures pulling at her skin. Her fingers, still trembling slightly, tentatively traced the new contours of her jaw, a reverence in her touch. "I knew it would be worth it. All the pain. It's gone now. Just remember to follow the aftercare instructions," the medical professional reminded her, a calm, professional demeanor, masking, perhaps, a familiar detachment to the subtle oddity of their own creations. But the human barely heard them. She was lost in the reflection, a profound, almost desperate satisfaction radiating from her. She had endured weeks of swelling, bruising, and chronic pain. She had submitted to the surgeon's scalpel, the precise, invasive resculpting of her very identity. And for this subtly unsettling, technically perfect, yet emotionally hollowed version of herself, she proclaimed the pain worth it. The Xylo's final report hammered home the chilling truth. Humans paid for pain, not just for pleasure, or strength, or spiritual solace, or even for bodily repair. They paid to fundamentally alter their public self, to achieve an idealized, often unnatural aesthetic. They willingly journeyed into the uncanny valley, embracing the lingering discomfort and the unsettling alteration, convinced that the agony endured was a fair price for the transformed face. For humanity, pain wasn't just a currency. It was an investment, a sacrifice, a harrowing passage they willingly undertook, even if the destination was a place where their own reflection seemed to whisper, almost, but not quite. The Xylos Explorer, Unit 774, hung silently, its optical sensors locked onto a towering structure of human engineering. Wind whipped around the edifice, making the delicate sensors vibrate. Below, a small platform jutted out over an immense, dizzying drop. A line of humans, clad in brightly colored protective gear, waited with a mixture of nervous chatter and palpable apprehension. This was an adventure park, the translation matrix offered, and the activity was a bungee jump, a controlled fall. One human, a male with wide, anxious eyes, stepped to the edge. His legs trembled visibly, his hands gripping the safety railings with white-knuckled intensity. The instructor, a human radiating casual confidence, attached a complex harness to his ankles. Unit 774 registered a surge of adrenaline, cortisol, and rapid heart rate in the subject, textbook fight-or-flight responses. Yet, the human had willingly walked to this precipice. He had paid a significant sum for this. "All right, Mark," the instructor's voice boomed, cutting through the wind. "Big breath. When you're ready, just lean forward. We've got you." Mark looked down. The ground seemed impossibly far, the river below a mere silver ribbon. His throat worked, a dry swallow. I don't know if I can," he choked out, his voice thin, fear stark in his eyes. Every primal instinct screamed, "Just retreat." Every fiber of his being was telling him this was wrong, this was danger, this was death. But then, something shifted. A flicker of stubborn defiance, a spark of pride, ignited in his gaze. He closed his eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, then, with a sharp, involuntary cry, he leaned forward. The fall was instantaneous. Unit 774's sensors registered the sudden, sickening acceleration, the human's body plummeting towards the earth at terrifying speed. A raw, guttural scream tore from his lungs, a pure, unadulterated expression of primal terror. The wind roared past, blurring the world into a streaking canvas of green and blue. His limbs flailed, uncontrolled, a frantic dance against the abyss. The elastic cord stretched, then snapped taut with a violent jerk that sent another wave of physical shock through his system. His descent halted abruptly, transforming into a series of terrifying, oscillating bounces. Then, slowly, as the oscillations lessened, a new sound emerged from the human, a ragged, breathless laugh. It was wild, bordering on hysterical, but undeniably joyful. He hung there, upside down, swaying gently, his face flushed, eyes wide with exhilaration. "I did it!" he shrieked, his voice hoarse, a triumphant roar. "Holy crap! I did it!" He was pulled back up, breathless, trembling, but beaming. He'd endured the psychological pain of absolute terror, the physical shock of deceleration, the profound disorientation. And he was accelerated. He paid for this, not just with money, but with the full, terrifying plunge into his own deepest fears. The Xylos's final report added another layer of bewildering complexity. Humanity willingly paid for the adrenaline market, for the precise, deliberate engineering of terror. They sought out experiences that mimicked mortal peril, that pushed their primal fear responses to the absolute limit, all for the resulting rush, the profound sense of accomplishment, the defiant truth that they had faced the controlled fall, and emerged, not just alive, but invigorated. For humans, pain wasn't just physical or spiritual. It was the sharp, intoxicating jab of fear itself, and they paid handsomely to feel its thrill. The Xylos Explorer, Unit 774, hung silent, its sensors tracking a colossal, twisted edifice of metal, rising hundreds of meters into the Terran sky. It was an amusement park ride, the translation matrix offered, a monument to the human desire to manufacture peril. Below, a sleek multi-car vehicle laden with humans ascended a terrifyingly steep incline, each click of the chain ratcheting up the tension in Unit 774's internal processors. The humans strapped into the vehicle were a kaleidoscope of emotions. Some clenched their eyes shut, faces pale, muttering what sounded like prayers. Others laughed, a wild, almost manic sound, their eyes wide with anticipation. Unit 774 registered a symphony of heightened physiological responses, spiking heart rates, surges of adrenaline, rapid shallow breathing, dilated pupils, all the classic signs of profound fear, yet willingly embraced, even desired. They had paid handsomely for a ticket to this. The vehicle reached the apex. For a terrifying, silent moment, it hung, suspended, the humans now tiny specks against the vastness of the sky, before plunging downwards with sickening speed. A collective, primal scream tore through the air, a sound that resonated with pure, unadulterated terror. The vehicle twisted, inverted, hurled its occupants through corkscrews and loops, subjecting them to forces that pressed them deep into their seats, then lifted them free, an engineered assault on their vestibular systems. Unit 774 sensors detected extreme G-forces, rapid changes in orientation, and the pervasive, chilling illusion of imminent catastrophe. This was the adrenaline market at its peak, selling the sensation of dying without the actual inconvenience. One human, a young female, initially screamed with what seemed like genuine panic, her hands clamped over her face. But as the vehicle tore through another dizzying inversion, her hands dropped. Her face, though still streaked with tears, held a wild, exhilarated grin. "Again! Do it again!" she shrieked, her voice hoarse as the ride rocketed into another high-speed turn. She was embracing the manufactured risk, finding a strange joy in the controlled chaos. Her male companion, eyes wide, breath coming in ragged gasps, looked utterly terrified for the entire duration. Yet, when the vehicle finally hissed to a halt, gently braking into the station, he didn't stumble out in shock. He wobbled, took a deep, shaky breath, then clapped his friend on the shoulder. "That was insane," he breathed, a wide, triumphant smile spreading across his face. "I thought I was going to die." But his eyes held an undeniable spark of pride, of accomplishment. The Xylos' final observation further complicated their understanding. Humans weren't just subjecting themselves to pain, they were paying to have risk manufactured for them. They sought out experiences where the illusion of mortal danger was so profound, so utterly convincing, that their bodies reacted as if death itself was imminent. They paid for that terror, that overwhelming sensation of being out of control, knowing, deep down, that safety protocols were in place. They paid to face the specter of their own demise, to feel the sharp edge of fear, and to walk away triumphant. For humanity, the adrenaline market wasn't just about thrills, it was about paying for the ultimate test of their own courage, proving to themselves again and again that they could stare into the abyss and emerge laughing. The Xylos Explorer, Unit 774, hung silent, its multispectral sensors penetrating the interior of a human dwelling. The air was cool, dim, illuminated primarily by the pulsating, often frantic, light of a large rectangular display screen. Before it sat a human hunched forward, their fingers flying across a complex array of input devices, a keyboard and mouse. This wasn't physical exertion or spiritual rite. This was the digital scar, and the human was basking in the glow of the black mirror. The human, a young male, was engaged in a competitive online game, the translation matrix relayed. On the screen, colorful avatars clashed in a simulated battlefield. Unit 774 registered a rapid escalation in the human's heart rate, shallow, rapid breathing, and heightened muscle tension in their jaw and shoulders. A low, frustrated groan rumbled in his chest as his avatar was swiftly eliminated. "No! Damn it! How did he even see me?" he yelled, slamming a fist lightly on his desk. Not pain from injury, but pain from defeat. He didn't stop. He immediately initiated another round, paying not with credits this time, but with another fragment of his emotional well-being, another surge of exasperation. His eyes, fixed on the glowing screen, narrowed with fierce concentration. Moments later, his team's virtual base was overrun. A stream of unintelligible, aggressive vocalizations erupted from his headset, communications from his digital teammates, laced with frustration and what Unit 774 identified as toxic rhetoric. The human flinched, pulling the headset from one ear, a grimace of pure annoyance twisting his features. "Seriously? What are you even doing?" he muttered, not to Unit 774, but to the unseen digital combatants. This was emotional pain, the sting of perceived inadequacy, the lash of verbal aggression, all delivered through a network of light and code. He paid for the internet connection, he paid for the game itself, and he paid, over and over, with his temper, his patience, and his emotional stability. Minutes later, a flicker of triumph crossed his face. His avatar executed a complex maneuver, eliminating a virtual enemy. "Got him!" "Yeah!" he cheered, a sharp, almost manic exhilaration replacing the previous frustration. The brief surge of positive neurochemicals was fleeting, however. Another enemy appeared. Another swift defeat. The cycle of digital frustration, anger, and brief, intoxicating victory continued. Hours blurring into an endless, self-inflicted psychological gauntlet. His eyes were red-rimmed, his posture slumped, yet he clicked, "Play again." "Just one more," he mumbled, a mantra of self-deception. The Xylos's final observation added another bewildering layer to the human enigma. They paid to enter digital landscapes of manufactured psychological distress, where frustration, anger, and the sting of failure were not just possibilities but inherent, recurring features. They paid, with their time, their money, and their emotional peace, to sit before the black mirror, willingly subjecting themselves to the digital scar. For humanity, pain wasn't just physical, spiritual, or aesthetic. It was a cognitive battle, a relentless digital struggle they embraced, believing the fleeting moments of triumph were worth the endless, self-imposed psychological torment. They chose the digital grind, not out of necessity but out of a fierce, unyielding drive to conquer, even if the enemy was often their own temper, or the meticulously designed difficulty of a program. The Xylos primary research vessel, Perceiver 7, hung in the cold silence of space, its central analytical core humming with a desperate, almost overloaded energy. Unit 774's final aggregated report had just finished compiling, a torrent of observational data that had rendered the Xylos's understanding of sentient life utterly obsolete. The mission had been to observe human recreation, the terrifying truth. Humanity willingly, repeatedly, and enthusiastically paid for pain. From the burning agony of capsaicin-laced, spicy food, to the deliberate, muscle-tearing pressure of deep tissue massages, from the sharp, bleeding artistry of tattoos, to the precise, invasive violence of dental drills, humanity's relationship with discomfort defied every known galactic axiom. The Xylos had witnessed tens of thousands of credits exchanged for the privilege of physical torment, for the brutal reshaping of flesh, for the raw, defiant triumph over self-inflicted agony. They paid to climb electrified obstacle courses, to feel the sickening plunge of a bungee jump, to have their very nervous systems manipulated into simulated terror. They endured weeks of spiritual pilgrimages across desolate landscapes and months of post-surgical recovery for the price of a face. But the final, most unsettling data came from the digital scar, the glowing black mirror of their virtual worlds. Here, humans paid not with physical sensation, but with emotional and psychological well-being. They paid subscription fees, microtransactions, and the invaluable currency of their time to enter digital realms meticulously designed with algorithms of agony. These programs weren't meant to relax or soothe. They were engineered to frustrate, to challenge, to constantly put the human at the precipice of defeat, to deliver precisely calibrated doses of mental anguish. The Xylos had observed countless humans, hunched before their screens, faces contorted with rage, frustration, and the bitter sting of failure. They'd heard their shouts, their grunts, their whispered curses as their digital avatars were annihilated, their meticulously crafted strategies crumbling to dust. They witnessed the emotional whiplash, the momentary surge of triumph, followed by the crushing weight of another digital setback. This wasn't accidental. It was programmed. It was the core gameplay loop. And humans kept paying. They kept playing. They kept coming back for more. The Tundred Perceiver 7 Tundra central processor ran its final synthesis. Every known species in the galaxy instinctively avoided pain, dedicating vast societal resources to its eradication. Humanity, however, had built an entire native economy around it. They commodified it, monetized it, packaged it, and then willingly purchased it in every conceivable form: physical, spiritual, aesthetic, psychological, and even digitally. Their resilience wasn't just in overcoming external threats. It was in their unparalleled, almost terrifying capacity to seek out and pay for the very experiences that would break any other sentient life form. The final report was devastatingly simple, yet profound. Conclusion: humanity is the only known species that willingly pays for pain. This behavior is not an anomaly but a fundamental, pervasive aspect of their culture, shaping their recreation, self-expression, spiritual beliefs, and even their digital interactions. Their capacity for self-inflicted suffering and their drive to conquer it in all its forms is unparalleled and presents a unique, unpredictable variable in galactic relations. For the Xylos, the understanding was complete. Humans didn't just survive overwhelming odds, they were the overwhelming odds, challenging themselves, pushing their own boundaries, and finding strange purpose in the crucible of their own agony.